right, I want to welcome everybody to Queens Historical Society's newest digital visit program. Today we'll be working with pan de muerto, a bread that's associated with Días de Muertos.
Día de Muertos.
Dia de Muertos. My pronunciation is not as good. This is a program that we're doing in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. And so Queens Historical Society has a volunteer here today who is going to show us how to make the bread. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show you step by step the recipe process, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the history of Dia de los Muertos and learn a bit about that as well. So I think we're just about ready to get started. Are you ready?
Almost there.
Almost ready. We've got to separate some egg whites.
I forgot to do that previous to the presentation.
Let me spin back around. And get you guys set up on our kitchen cam. Let me know if you need anything repeated or if the audio is a little mumbled or muddled due to kitchen noises.
Or if they have any questions.
Or if you have any questions.
Well, hello. My name is Sebastian. I am from Mexicali, Mexico. In our area, usually Dia de Muertos is not as prevalent as it is in most of central and southern Mexico. But lately, since I've moved here to New York City, I've been trying to connect more with my culture, more with my roots. And so part of it was starting to do pan de muertos during these dates. And so I decided to share some of that with you. First, what we're gonna be needing, if you can write down the ingredients, I'll do it. I'll list them slowly so you have some time to do that. You're gonna need 4 cups of all-purpose flour. You're gonna need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. You're gonna need 1.5 squares of butter. You're gonna need 3 eggs and 3 egg yolks, extra ones. We need to separate the whites from 3 of those eggs, okay? So you have that in mind. We're gonna need 3 teaspoons of orange extract. And you're gonna need 1/2 cup of milk. You're gonna warm it up and it has to be around 110 Fahrenheit. What you're gonna do with that milk is that, you're also gonna need some active drying yeast. If you get Fleischmann's, try to get 1.5. You're gonna need 1.5, which would be around 6 ounces, okay? So the first step, I did it previously because you're gonna need to let it sit. You're gonna put 1.5 of those Fleischmann's yeast on a bowl. You're gonna add 3 tablespoons from your flour. Okay, that's not additional flour, it's from the same amount of flour that I already listed. And also you're gonna need 1 tablespoon of sugar from the same sugar that I already mentioned. Oh, a little extra, I forgot to list. You're gonna need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Let me get that real quick. Sorry about that. I tried to get everything ready, but since I had to prepare a couple of them previous to this class, so I could skip some time because you're gonna need to let it rest like this mix. You're gonna need to let it rest for 20 minutes at least under the sun or in a warm place in your house. If you have a heater, you can leave it a little closer to it, but uh, don't let it fully cook there. So it's gonna grow into this sponge, right? That's why I had to prepare some stuff previous to the lesson. Something that you also will need to do with the orange, you're gonna need the zest. You're gonna need a zester, and you're gonna zest it from the orange. Try not to get into the white part of it. Try to only do the orange bit because otherwise it's gonna sour your bread and you don't want that. So gently around the orange. These are a couple of oranges that I've already tested. I don't know how clear it is for you guys, but you can see that they still look orange. They don't look too white. So you want to keep it like that. You don't want to go too far into uh, what do you call the white part? Pith? Okay, so you're gonna need two of that.
Two what's that? Two oranges worth?
Two oranges of zest, yeah. The zest of two oranges. So something that I hadn't noticed before through all my years in Mexico, surprisingly, is that pan de muerto is usually flavored like oranges. It's kind of like a funny thing that I never had noticed. I don't know how familiar you are with Mexican candies, but there's also this other candy shaped like a corn with chile around it that is actually flavored like strawberries. And most of my friends who are really into those have never noticed until I mentioned it. I actually never had it because I never thought a lollipop made out of like with corn flavor would be good. And turns out that wasn't the case. So that's when I decided to give it a try, and it's actually quite good. I really do like those. Okay, so you gotta make sure to test your oranges. Very likely don't want to go into the white part. Okay, so we're gonna start with the mix. So what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna pour all your flour on any surface, any table that you might have for cooking. Okay, like this. You're gonna make like a little mountain. Okay, we're gonna be kneading it by hand. I don't know if it works by kneading it in a standing mixer. I have never tried it because I don't have one. And the traditional way would be to do it by hand. You're gonna grab another bowl. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. And you're gonna make like a little pit in the middle of it, like this, okay? Oops. Some of it got attached to the bowl. You're gonna make a pit like this. And then what you're gonna do, you're gonna grab the sugar and you're gonna spread it around, okay? All of it has to go around. And you're gonna do the same with the salt. Very little, so it doesn't have to be spread evenly around it, just at the end. And now what you're gonna need to do, you're gonna grab your sponge after it's been 20 minutes and it has already rised, and you're gonna pour it right here in the middle, okay? Like a volcano. Try to get as much of it as you can because you're gonna need that yeast because pan de muerto is very spongy, okay? So once you finish with that, What you're gonna be doing, you're gonna grab your eggs and you're gonna be adding them one by one, like this, and you're gonna start mixing. You can add a little bit of the whites, little by little. You're gonna incorporate them with the sponge. And you're gonna be grabbing a little bit of the flour from the edges, okay, little by little. Once the first yolk has incorporated, we're gonna go for the second one. And you're gonna do this one by one, okay? I don't know if you want me to repeat anything while I do this. If you have any questions so far, just so you can write down the recipe. We're gonna also be sending it at the end, but some of it is better shown through the example. It's a little bit hard to describe this whole process. Okay, one by one, you added. Any questions so far?
Yes. How much flour was it again?
It was 4 cups of all-purpose flour. Okay, another one. This is gonna be enough for like 3 large pan de muertos. Okay, I prepared a smaller mix earlier today and yesterday night to show you how it looks completed and to be able to show you the full process without having to wait for too long. So while I work on this, just want to start telling you a little bit about Dia de Muertos. Dia de Muertos is the result of the mix between pre-Hispanic indigenous rituals related to death and also honoring the dead, sorry, and also the Catholic festivities of Day of All Saints and All Souls Day. In Mexico, Dia de Muertos is usually celebrated throughout 2 days. November 1st, which would be All Saints Day, Dia de Todos los Santos, it is dedicated to the kids that died young, that of young age. They're innocent, they're saints, and usually they will start setting up the altar de muertos, which is like a small altar towards the dead relatives of each family. They start setting everything up a little bit earlier, but on the first is when the true ritual begins. And on the second is when the souls of all the other people, adults, come into the world, into the world of the living, and they visit their families. So this festivity is not only Mexican, but the Dia de Muertos as we know it popularly, like the whole papel picado and the altares, the sugar skulls, all that stuff is mostly Mexican. Other countries, for example, like Ecuador, they celebrate it by, well, most cultures that celebrate these days, even European ones that celebrate Day of All Saints and All Souls Day, they usually go to the graveyard and leave flowers to their dead relatives. But for example, in Ecuador, they usually have this traditional drink called, give me a second, it's colada morada, which is like a fruity, spicy porridge made out of corn and some, I believe it's blackberries. It's mostly celebrated by the Quichua people, which are like a fourth of the people in Ecuador. Just a small pause here. As you see, I'm starting to get to the sugar. So try to get first all of the flour, and once you're done with the flour, you start incorporating the sugar.
We also have a couple of questions.
Yeah?
We had one question from Angela asking, was it 3 eggs separated into egg yolk and egg white?
It's gonna be 3 full eggs and then 3 egg yolks.
So 6 egg yolks total?
6 egg yolks total and the whites of 3 eggs.
All right. And then Wendy was wondering, are baking powder or baking soda needed?
No, they are not. We are adding yeast. We should do the whole rising bit. So that's why you won't need the baking powder or baking soda. So a note that something that you should keep in mind when kneading all of this is that this dough is gonna be really sticky, like incredibly sticky. And you're gonna be tempted to add more flour to it. Do not do that because you don't want your bread to get too hard. Pan de muerto is supposed to be very light, very soft and spongy. So believe it or not, we're gonna have to knead this for 30 to 40 minutes. That's why I had to prepare a couple of them already. So we can show the full process without having to wait like 3 hours or more because it takes a lot of time. So another country that also celebrates Dia de Muertos, for example, in a different way would be Guatemala. In Guatemala, they also, as I mentioned, they go to their graveyards and all, but something that they do, they have this small celebration where they fly kites. They believe that part of their beliefs is that these kites are like a guide for people from the other side to visit the world of the living. Sometimes they leave little notes on their kite cords for their dead loved ones to read them. So speaking about the origins, mostly what I found is of Mexica, from the Mexica culture, which would be the Aztecs. That's their, they used to call themselves Mexica. So the Aztecs had their different months, different calendars than ours, and their months were separated by 20 days. I forgot how many months it was, but it was a set of months of 20 days, and one last month made out of only 5 days. So the festivities that led to Dia de Muertos were 2 months. They were celebrated around July and August. On the first month, they would cut this tree. I forgot the name, it's chocotl. They would decorate it with flowers. Young people and warriors would dance around this tree. They would decorate it with flowers as well as their temples. And it would involve some human sacrifices of children. I know it's a little tragic and all, but it's part of that culture, of course, and it's not something that, of course, happens at all anymore in these festivities, thankfully. And they would also offer flowers to their dead relatives, to kids mostly, during the first month. They'd also, the one goddess who preceded these festivities was Mictecacihuatl. She was the wife of the god that was in charge of the underworld. Okay, just a quick pause. Once this starts incorporating. It's a little dry for some reason, but don't worry, we are gonna be adding some of that butter that I mentioned. I recommend you to soften it first, okay? If it's not soft enough by the time you are gonna be adding it, what I would advise, if it's a little cold still, to cut it into small squares or rectangles so it's easier to knead it into the dough, okay? You want it to fully incorporate the mix. And we're gonna be adding the second one here. Get ready for your hands to get really sticky. I would advise you to cut your nails or clean them very well. You don't wanna knead all this dough with long nails or dirty nails. Okay, you're gonna mix them up. And once it's fully incorporated, once the butter is fully incorporated with all this dough, you're gonna add the orange extract and the zest. I'm gonna require my cameraman to help me with adding the zest and the orange extract.
We have another question from Elena. Does the 30-minute kneading time include? Oh, that's the end of the question. I think Elena hit enter before it was finished being typed out.
Well, I would say that the 30-40 minute time counts once you have already mixed in all of the flour, not necessarily the butter, yeah. And that's the orange extract.
Great. Do you want me to add it slowly?
Give me a second, I'm gonna make a little pit there.
There we go. And to Kara's question, yes, we will be posting this recipe at the end and including it with the video.
Okay. So there's no specific technique for this. Just knead it. You can slap it on the surface. I usually do it a lot. I would advise you, if it's not too cold, maybe set up a fan nearby or turn on your AC, because this is like a very demanding task and you're gonna get really tired. So in regards to the origins, on the second month of these rituals of the Aztecs, they would also perform some other sacrifices, usually of rival tribes. Aztecs were known to be like very, what do you say? Like
Competitive?
Not competitive, but like they would get into constant war. Yeah, combative. That's the word exactly. And they would constantly like sacrifice some of the people they captured from other indigenous groups in different rituals.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Can we use a hand mixer for this step?
I never tried it that way, to be honest. So I wouldn't be able to advise you. You can try it. I guess it should be the same, to be honest, because you're just mixing, but it's a very
Tough dough.
It's a very tough dough. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if it could damage your mixer. Let me investigate more about that, and I'll try to add that to the notes on the recipe. I'm guessing that they might, because For example, in my case, I never made pan de muerto before. We would always get it from panaderia, which is like a pastry shop, Mexican pastry shop, or from grocery stores. You will see in Mexico at the grocery stores, they'll have these large displays with pan de muertos of all different sizes, small ones, like individual ones, or for large families. Um, Honestly, Mexicans, we really love pan de muerto. It's a staple of our culture, even if we are not as observant, some of us, of Dia de Muertos festivities. For example, my family, we wouldn't usually set up altares de muertos, or we would every now and then go to the cemetery on Dia de Muertos, not always. Um, but something that, regardless of how much we celebrated it or not, is we would always have pan de muertos. That's like.
I have another question.
Uh-huh.
How do you know when this is done?
Okay. Well, you're gonna need it for about 30 to 40 minutes until you start noticing that the dough is no longer attaching itself to the surface that you're kneading it into, or your hands. You're gonna, believe me,
The recipe.
this looks like way too sticky. It will actually, if you can grab that bowl on the table, Jaren. No, the other one, the one covered with, yeah, that. You can take off the paper towel. It's gonna look like that. So that's the one that I made earlier today for this presentation.
It doesn't stick to the paper towel.
It does a little. I would recommend you, if you have plastic wrap, I would advise you to do that. Actually, the yeast mix that I showed you earlier, the one that you have to leave resting for 20 minutes, I forgot to add the detail. You need to cover it with a plastic wrap or with a wet paper towel if you don't have plastic wrap. But plastic wrap would be preferable.
Got another question from Bronca.
Yeah.
Where could one buy pan muerto? Any NYC bakery suggestions?
To be honest, right now with I've been wanting to check that. Last year that I came here, I decided to do it myself. This year I wanted to buy it instead. But with the whole pandemic issue, I haven't been able to look around. I would advise to check with maybe some other person who might have lived longer here of Mexican descent. I'm pretty sure maybe Jackson Heights might have. I do remember going there and seeing lots of panaderias. So to be honest, just look panaderia on Google Maps and I'm sure they will have it.
Can you spell
Panaderia. P as in Peter, A, apple, N, Nancy, A, apple, D, David, E, Edgar, R, Robert, I, India, A, apple, panaderia. Or Mexican bakery. You can also search for that in Google Maps and I'm sure you will find it. So I'm really sorry I wasn't able to properly answer that question. But hopefully, because I really like pan de muerto, but this is very tiring and I'm pretty sure next year I'm gonna want to take a break from doing it myself. So where was I? Oh, the second month of these celebrations. In this one, they would also dance around this decorated tree with flowers, with feathers, and they would also have these sort of bells. I forgot the English name for them. Give me a second. Huh?
Bells would work.
Well, like sleigh bells, I guess, but
A jingle bell, probably.
jingling bells. They would dance around this tree. They would fast for 3 days in honor um, of the dead people. They would also, part of the ritual was them getting on top of their houses and calling their dead ones to visit them. Um, During this whole celebrations around the tree, they would also set up altares to their dead relatives with food and flowers, different decorations, which would end up evolving into what uh, altares de muertos are now. These are the precedent. Uh, at the end of these festivities, young people of the Mexica tribe, they would climb the tree. There would be a small doll made out of, give me a second, amaranth on the top. They would set it up earlier, and by the end of the festivities, the young people of the Mexica tribe would climb the tree and try to compete to be the first one to get to that doll. They would later throw it to the ground for all the people under the tree to pretty much split it between themselves. They would compete for it, to be honest, but it would end up in many pieces. And at the end of the festivities, they would take down the tree. Another thing about Dia de Muertos, to how we know it today, is that Catholics would include many of their rituals and their own imagery. So right now, Dia de Muertos has these different staples. One of the staples are calaveras, skulls. There are different kinds of calaveras. There's the sugar skull, which is basically they would make this syrup out of sugar and water and put it into a mold and harden it. And usually it can be decorated with frosting. Well, it's not like the cookie frosting, the one that is hardened.
Like a royal icing.
Yeah, like royal icing. They would now it's decorated with that. Sometimes you can put the name of it if you are gonna put it in an altar de muertos, you usually put the name of the person you're dedicating it to, whether it's a dead person or a friend or a relative. I know it might sound a little bit morbid, but it's really not. It's mostly a different vision of death, right? It's a different perspective on it. After all, that is natural, and whether we like it or not, it's gonna be there. And I guess we might as well just accept it and try to see it in a more positive light. It's not necessarily an end. Another thing that calaveritas can be made of, the sugar ones, they can be made out of chocolate or of amaranth seeds. To be honest, amaranth ones are my least favorite. Calaveritas can also mean, for example, the drawings. You see all the skulls that are used to decorate. For example, we have these skulls that my mother-in-law sent us to decorate with. They're very typical. We usually decorate lots of stuff. For example, I remember in kindergarten and in elementary school that they give us these skeleton drawings for us to paint over and decorate, and sometimes we decorated them as our favorite cartoons or as famous people. There's different imagery of skeletons and skulls that we use to decorate during these celebrations. Also, calaveritas can mean there's literary calaveritas, literary skulls. These calaveras are basically like poems, rhymes. They're like of more of a comedy, comedic nature. Usually involves like a personification of death coming for a famous person or politician, or maybe even a friend if you write them for a friend, and it involves like maybe this person dying of funny accident or embarrassing accident related to maybe one of their hobbies or personal interest of theirs. Again, I know it might sound a little bit morbid, but it's more in the means of trying to take that on a more lighter note. Also, another staple uh, of Dia de Muertos would be, of course, Pan de Muertos, like the one we're doing. It's usually meant to it can be, there's different ways of making pan de muertos. I'm showing you my favorite one because it's covered in sugar, but it can also be decorated with, I forgot the name of it in English, sesame seeds. That one you will see more often. I believe it's in the southern parts of Mexico. It's more traditional, but I like the one with sugar because, as you can see, I really like eating sweets. That's how I got this belly. Um, Another staple of Dia de Muertos are, of course, marigolds, flor de cempasúchil. This flower is very emblematic. They use it to decorate graves, altares de muertos, it's basically a very classic imagery element of the whole celebrations. Of course, going to a graveyard and the flowers you use to decorate the graveyards are not necessarily limited to marigolds, but they're definitely a staple. Another staple is, of course, altar de muertos. The altar de muertos are basically like a small shrine made for to honor the deceased. The more traditional ones have 7 floors, but it's not necessarily the required amount. You can do it like 3, 2. There's even people who set them with just 1 floor, but they usually involve, well, a picture of the deceased that you're honoring on your altar is a must. You must have a picture of that person. Also, if the person was Catholic, you usually decorate it with crosses and images of saints, Catholic imagery. Also, another staple of altar de muertos would be candles and veladoras. Veladoras are basically candles decorated with Catholic imagery like saints or a Virgin of Guadalupe and the like. They also might have a glass of water for the deceased to be able to satiate their thirst after completing their trip from the world of the dead to the world of the living. Usually they also are, well, this one is also a must, would be decorating it with marigolds. Marigolds, not only are they really pretty to look at, but they're also believed to help the dead find their way back home. They're supposed to guide the dead. What other thing? Papel picado. Papel picado is basically this, what is the paper that we use? Tissue paper, yeah. In Mexico, we call it papel de China. I don't know why. we decorate it with different designs. It can be made through, well, more complex designs will have them like with a, yeah, they will emboss it like with complex designs, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. You can just grab a tissue paper and fold it into a triangle and do, huh? I don't know what you said, but okay. But you can just fold it into a triangle and cut on the edges and it will make different designs. I would advise you to Google how to do it because this is not a class on how to do papel picado and I don't have the materials. But it's really nice to look at and it looks really pretty and fits perfectly with the decorations. So basically those are some of the staples of an altar de muertos. Another current thing that has become part of the celebrations are La Catrina. La Catrina, I don't know if you're familiar with it, is like this very fancy skeleton lady that is, people usually dress up as her during Dia de Muertos. Some in Mexico do it for Halloween. Don't do it. If if you're not Mexican, usually it's some don't consider it in good taste. I personally do not have any objection to it, but I'm new to this country, and for me, some things might not be like, some topics might not be as sensitive as for those that have lived here all of their lives or who have lived here considerably more time than me. But well, this Katrina image, funnily enough, didn't even have anything to do with Dia de Muertos originally. She was created by this cartoonist, Mexican cartoonist around 1910s. It was supposed to be like a critique of indigenous people who tried to fit into European society by renouncing their roots. It's not meant to mock indigenous people for like being lesser, more like trying to cut off what, like renounce to their identity, to their origins, just for the sake of fitting in between all the Europeans. So it was, the original name was La Calavera Garbancera. Garbancero is someone basically an indigenous person who stops cultivating corn and starts cultivating garbanzo instead, chickpea. Chickpea is a staple of Spaniard cuisine. So you see, it's basically like renouncing to what is in your blood for the sake of like selling out to the Spaniards, which it's definitely more complex culturally, but I think it's a very valid critique to make about like the fact that there's nothing wrong with our culture, with our roots, and there's no need for us to renounce to that just in order to fit in. So this cartoon and this Calavera Garbancera was eventually added into one of Diego Rivera's murals, sorry. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a very famous painter, and he was part of this artistic movement called muralismo. He would paint lots of murals. And one of his most famous paintings was Paseo. In English, it's basically Sunday afternoon at the Central Alameda. Alameda is like a mall with lots of trees, álamos. That's why it's Alameda. And he drew these Calavera Garbancera in between Jose Guadalupe Posada, the cartoonist, and a picture of himself in this mural. Basically trying to, it wasn't also related to the original meaning. It was more about like how this Mexico is so familiar with death and with skulls, like they're part of our Mexican identity. And even though La Calavera Garbancera was already famous in our culture, just a small pause, you're gonna notice that, see, it's starting to get detached from the countertop. Exactly. It's not as sticky as it was, but it's gonna be really tough. So when she was portrayed in this mural, she ended up cementing her presence in our cultural, in pop culture, basically, and she became La Catrina. Catrín in Spanish, it's basically a dandy, very fancy person, very fancy man. Catrina is basically the female version of that, a very fancy woman. So after that, instead of being a critique of these people trying to fit into the European aesthetics and society, it ended up becoming some sort of avatar to how Mexico views death. And eventually she was seen as an avatar of the goddess of death, Mictecacihuatl, sorry. It's a little difficult to pronounce even for me. So by now she's seen by many pretty much like a Grim Reaper in a certain way, but much fancier and more inviting. She's, again, in Mexican culture, death isn't meant to be as, like, doesn't have as negative of a connotation, at least in our indigenous roots. For example, for the Aztecs, they actually considered to die in battle for them was one of the greatest honors. It was a big deal. But anyway, so she ended up becoming like this avatar of them. And now you will see her walking around maybe in some Dia de Muertos festivals, for example, in Pátzcuaro, Michoacán, in Mexico. They usually have like this large celebration when it's Dia de Muertos. They will have a festival and they will have a tianguis, which is basically like a flea market, music festival. They will even have performers singing and all that stuff. There's lots of drinking, of course, because people like to party. Yeah.
We have a question from Bronca. Do the schools in Mexico introduce children to the indigenous Aztec languages? Do they teach them?
On mine, I'm from Baja California. Baja California is a little bit more detached to its Mexican roots, unfortunately. So not in my experience, but I do know that many other schools in central and southern parts of Mexico do teach some indigenous languages. I think the current president, regardless of his politics, one of the things he has intended to do is introduce a little bit more of indigenous language, which is actually really good. I must say I do agree with the fact that we need to give a little bit more of importance to that kind of stuff, especially because many indigenous groups in Mexico aren't in the best conditions. Like I guess it's a little similar to how it happens here in the United States. Any other questions? Okay, so yeah, basically one thing that I would like to say about Dia de Muertos is that do not be afraid to participate in some of their rituals. I would advise you to get in contact maybe with Mexican friends that you might have and ask if what would be the most respectful thing to do. You can also go to Latin American cultural centers. I'm pretty sure there's plenty here in New York, given the fact that it's New York and there's a very high amount of like cultural diversity. And I feel like in my time that I've been here, I've seen that they give lots of importance to that kind of stuff. So I would invite you to get informed, and I personally do think people should be welcome to participate in Mexico. We usually are we're eager to share our culture and let other people participate. But I would also ask everyone who does show some interest to be respectful, to make sure to get informed about what is culturally acceptable or what is culturally insensitive to do. Uh, I would avoid like disguising as a Mexican stereotype, for example, for Halloween. That is never a good look. But I do think that sugar skulls and all that stuff, like decorating your face, uh, at least in my experience, again, as someone who just moved in here, I don't see that much of an issue with people honoring Dia de Muertos because it's definitely an interesting aspect of our culture and something that we are very proud of. Uh, I must say that with the with the most recent rise of popularity of this tradition, there has been a lot of tourism in Mexico. Pátzcuaro, Michoacan, that I mentioned, is very reliant on people from all over the country and even from different countries to visit. Um, and it's become a very important source of revenue for the people on this town. So there's definitely an interest for Mexico to share the culture, and it's a very beautiful tradition. So I don't see why there's would be an issue with showing interest and wanting to participate, as long as you stay respectful, of course.
I have to comment just how orangey it smells every time I get close to it. It's a very fresh citrus sensation.
Yeah, surprisingly, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I have not noticed before how it tasted so much like orange. And when it hit me, I was like, how did I never realize this? This tastes so much like orange. And believe me, this recipe does taste like the ones that I would buy at a grocery store. So it definitely tastes authentic, or at a panaderia. So I'm pretty sure I'm doing it right. um, but yeah, it's honestly really good. It's almost getting there. How long has it been?
Oh gosh, it's been an hour since you started. About.
Oh, okay. So I've been doing this for more than 40 minutes. I'm guessing that maybe it would be, well, it's almost getting there. So I would continue, to be honest. But I don't want to, well, give me a second.
Just gonna scrape off that stuff around.
I think at this point it's almost ready, so I would give it a little bit more, but I wanna continue with the next step. So I would advise you to continue kneading a little bit more if it's already there. But let's clean here and let's go to the next step. What I would do usually, there's this window test, okay, where you grab your dough and you start spreading it and see how it starts growing thinner. There it broke. It shouldn't do that. But if it were ready, it shouldn't do that anymore, okay?
Kind of like a pizza dough.
So I'm gonna skip the kneading for a moment there. I'm gonna, what I would do, once it's ready, I would oil up a bowl. Can you pass me that blue bowl? Okay.
Do you want me to add the oil?
If you want to, if you can, yeah. So we would add a little bit of oil around it so it doesn't stick too much. It's gonna stick anyways, but we don't want it to get too attached to the bowl.
Where are those brushes?
Oh, one of them is there.
So I've added only about a tablespoon of oil because we're just doing it to make it non-stick. Yep.
So you would put it there and let it rest around 1 hour to 2 hours. Okay. Again, under the sun, covered in a plastic wrap or a wet towel, and until it doubles its size. I'm gonna go wash my hands because as you see, they're very dirty right now, and I'm gonna need to clean a little bit around here as well. So bear with me, please. In the meantime, if you have any other questions about Dia de Muertos or about the recipe, feel free to write down. Or any comments so far?
Here, what can I use to clean that up? Ooh, that's goopy. That's goopy.
Yes. You're gonna find that a little bit of it is just gonna stick to your counter. So just don't try too hard to get it into the mix. If it just stick to the counter, just clean it up, and you won't need that. So I'm gonna rub this. So for this one, I made half of the recipe, okay, because I didn't want to do too much or I would end up with way too many pan de muertos. So, okay, I'm gonna need to, yeah.
Let's see. We have a question. What major holiday comes after Dia de los Muertos? Is there an equivalent of Thanksgiving in Mexico, Indigenous Peoples holiday?
Regarding indigenous peoples, I am not very familiar with their holidays. And I think in general there isn't. It would be Christmas. Christmas, I think would be the most, well, yeah, because I was not raised Catholic, so I'm also not sure about many of their holidays. I think maybe, let me Google it real quick because I do know that around December there's also like this holiday for the Virgen de Guadalupe. Oh, thank you.
Does this need to be just dumped out?
Yeah, in a moment. I'm really sorry about that. I just want to make sure. Yeah. 12th of December, December 12th, it would be like a celebration to the Virgen de Guadalupe. It's a Catholic religion holiday. I'm not very sure what they do for that day. I'm really sorry I couldn't answer that question for you.
It's more regarding federal-based holidays.
Oh, federal days. Yeah, it would be until Navidad and Christmas, sorry. Christmas also is celebrated differently in Mexico. We have these holiday parties called posadas, where like traditionally the whole neighborhood would gather and they would bring food and share the table. People would walk around the street. There's like this traditional song where people pretty much reenact Joseph and Mary going through different houses asking for a place to stay. And of course, there's piñatas, which traditionally are made out of clay, decorated with paper, and they are usually filled with peanuts and fruits. So this is the dough after it has been resting for a couple hours. This one is not the same amount as the other one. The other one is gonna be much larger. This is half of it. Okay. And you're gonna put some flour in your countertop or wherever you're gonna be working on your pan de muertos. And you're gonna see it's still thick. I put a fair amount of foil and it still stick to it, but it makes it easier to get it out of the bowl. Okay. There it is. So first of all, what you're gonna want to do, we're gonna want to push out the air and spread it a little bit, okay, into like a rectangle. A little bit like this. Try to make it the same length all across, okay? The same width. Sorry. Okay, and we're gonna cut it into different pieces. This one, since it's smaller, I'm gonna cut it into I'm gonna cut a fourth off, okay? But on the other one, which is the double amount, I would cut it into 4/4. And with this one, you're gonna do the skeletons that you're gonna use to decorate your pan de muerto. And the other 3/4, you're gonna do three different balls, okay? You're gonna want to...
So this would make one pan de muerto and the other one would make 3?
The amount that we were working with on the recipe would make 3. But this one, since it's only half, I'm gonna just do 1. Okay, it's gonna be a little bit larger than usual, and you're gonna want to shape it into a ball, okay? Turn it around and shape it into a large ball. Okay, make sure to get rid of the air bubbles there. And something to keep in mind, you're gonna see that here, like where I'm tucking in all of the dough, it has to remain under it, okay? Because that's the part we don't want to see on your pan de muerto, okay? Because it will look ugly. So we're gonna need some baking sheet and some wax paper. Okay. And you're gonna set your pan de muerto here. It's okay if it loses its form. You can reshape it again. Try to make it like spread it out a little bit so it doesn't lose its shape. Okay, we want it to look round. Oh, sorry. And this one, what we're gonna do, we're gonna grab this little bit and we're gonna make it into a bowl, just the same as the other one. Oh, actually, sorry about that. You're gonna need to add a little bit of flour, just a handful of it, okay? Because you want it to be a little bit tougher than the base that we're using for the pan de muerto. So we're gonna make it round. Okay, here, like this. And this one, we're gonna divide it into two. Here. What we're gonna do with this, we're gonna spread it again, make it the same width, all across, both of them. Try to make them the same width. I'm really bad with this part, so excuse my pan de muerto is not gonna be as pretty as maybe some of the more experienced bakers in this class, but it's an attempt. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna grab one finger and you're gonna run it like this in the middle, okay? And you want it to like get like this. You want it to grow much thinner here and these two lumps. And these two lumps, we're gonna now use two fingers and we're gonna run them like this. Okay, this is supposed to look a little bit more like a bone. Personally, I never thought they looked much like bones. But it's supposed to resemble one, right? You're gonna do the same here with this other one. And also try to pull it a little bit, make it a little bit longer, because we're gonna put that on top of our cake, okay, of our pan de muerto, sorry. So we're gonna grab it. Oh, sorry about that. You're gonna need to grab some water on a bowl. Give me a second.
And what is the water for?
Just a little bit of water. You'll see, don't worry. You're gonna use a brush. So you're gonna get it a little bit wet, not too much. And you're gonna run it across the pan de muerto, okay? That's where you're gonna set the bone that I just made. So you're gonna grab it now. You're gonna spread it all across. Try to reach both ends. And this part in the middle has to be on the center of the circle, okay? We're gonna do the same with the other one. We're gonna do a cross, okay? Just a little bit, not too much water. You don't want your...
Uh-oh, our video feed cut out.
Oh.
One moment.
When did it cut off? Just so... Oh, okay. Give us a moment, sorry about that. Did it get too hot?
It probably did.
Yeah, sometimes the phone gets a little bit too hot, but okay, we're back, right?
Yes.
Okay, write on the comments where did we cut off, please?
One on the
Oh, okay, you want to see the one on the bread? Okay, that's how it looks like. Okay, and I did I added more water. Sorry, microphone is here. I added a little bit more water across, okay, where I'm gonna set the other one across here. Okay, you want it to reach the end of the pan de muerto. And again, the center of the bone has to be on the center of the circle. And one last bit of water, a little bit, not too much, here on the center. That's where we're gonna set up this little bowl. Well, quite big, but you get what I mean. Okay, this thing, you're gonna leave it under the sun, next to the window or in a hot place, warm place in your house for about an hour until it doubles its size, okay? And once it doubles its size, you're gonna put it in the oven. You gotta preheat the oven first to 340 Fahrenheit, okay? 340 Fahrenheit. I'm not gonna put it right now, but at the end of it, it's gonna look a little bit like this. You're gonna put it on the oven for 20 to 25 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes. It's not, it can vary depending on your oven. It's gotta look golden like this one, okay? That's the one that I made yesterday for this. And it's almost ready, but not yet. Once it comes out of the oven, I would advise you to put it on a cooling rack like this one, if you have one, okay? Until it cools off.
We had a question
Yeah?
from Carmen. Since making the bread manually takes a long time to make, do families take the opportunity and explain the ritual of what the pan means to younger ones and the possibility that this is a family tradition to pass down?
Yeah, definitely. Like the whole traditions of Dia de los Muertos usually involves in people of indigenous groups gathering. As I didn't mention it here, but there's indigenous groups that celebrate Dia de Muertos for a full month, and they perform their usual everyday rituals as long as the ones for this special holiday, gathering around, and they also use it as an opportunity to reconnect with their family. Sometimes when they spread around the country and they gather around for Dia de los Muertos, they might reconnect and get caught up on each other's lives. It's like a very central holiday for these communities to gather and reconnect with each other, with their ancestors, and of course, the importance of the rituals is also something that they share between each other and their meaning.
So what are you cooking in the toaster?
Oh, so right now I'm melting some butter. That's the word. So once your bread has cooled down, there.
The second one.
Okay.
You got it.
Once you have finished cooling, once it has finished cooling down, you're gonna melt some butter. Can be on the microwave or in a small toaster, doesn't matter. You're gonna grab your brush, soak it in butter, and you're gonna spread it across the pan de muerto. Okay? All across the pan de muerto. Doesn't need to be a lot of butter. We don't wanna like soak it with butter. We just want to gently cover it with some of it. And then what you're going to do, you're going to grab a spoon or a cup, whatever you have at hand. Thank you. And you're going to grab some sugar. Use your sugar container. It used to be for pretzels. And you're going to shower it with sugar. Depending on how much you like sugar, of course. I like it a lot, but it's not all gonna get attached. So even if it looks like, wait, this dude is adding way too much sugar on their pan de muertos, don't worry. Not all of it is gonna stick. Okay, you're gonna let it dry. And at the end, I'm just gonna do it a little bit earlier to show you. See? This is what it looks like usually at the end. Oop. Do you guys see it? And that's our pan de muerto. Let me cut some of it. This one is fine, don't worry. We usually, in my family, this is my favorite part, the bones. So I usually, this is a lot. Sometimes they're smaller. This is what it ends up looking like. You see it's very spongy, very soft. Like, and it's really sweet. It's really good. I really recommend it. And well, that's the end of our lesson for today. I don't know if you have any other questions in regards to the pan de muerto or the tradition.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of the day to come visit us digitally here at Kingsland Homestead. The Queens Historical Society has lots of other programs coming up that we would love for you guys to take a look at. You can always check our website for more information. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more, or if you're Spanish speaking, Hispanic, or understand enough of it, we're going to be having a virtual tour coming up on October 17th of Corona. This was planned on being an in-person tour, however, with recent surge in COVID cases, decided to be safe, and we've moved it entirely to virtual. That one is going to be on Zoom, October 17th. We also have on October 25th, Queens Historical Society is having a virtual exhibit on Italian-American immigrants, a fundraiser, and an art sale. That one's going to be digital and a great time. And then we also are still having Holly Tour this year, but it is going to be moving over to a digital format for everyone's safety. So keep an eye out for more details about that. Those should be coming soon. Let me do a quick check for any more questions and comments. We got lots of thank yous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And the recipe will be linking at the end, or this is the end. We'll be emailing that because I can't just show it to you right now, but keep an eye out on your emails. We'll have more information there coming probably, if not tonight, by tomorrow. So thank you, everybody. And we hope to see you digitally sometime soon again.
Thank you very much.